China says its manned spaceship, the Shenzhou 12, has successfully docked at the Tiangong space station. The rocket took off from Inner Mongolia overnight. It's China's first space mission with taikonauts on board in nearly 5 years. Their mission, should they choose to accept it, is to spend 3 months in orbit to conduct scientific experiments and perform space station maintenance. Beijing has big aspirations in space, with another 11 flights planned over the coming years. Now let's bring in Dr. Bleddyn Bowen, a space policy and warfare expert from the University of Leicester. Thank you so much there, Dr. Bowen, for joining us here on Your News Now. So this will be China's longest crewed space mission to date. What does that tell you about China's aspirations for space?
So China is rising, you could say, as a comprehensive space power. And this means that the space station is very much the pinnacle of its scientific and engineering ambitions and projects that's actually achieved so far. But it's only one part of China's very large space sector and activities. It has a very large military intelligence and security-orientated infrastructure with satellites, but also a lot of commercial and infrastructure building services as well for needs on Earth. But this space station is a real marker of its increasing sophistication and capability, and matching what the Soviet Union and Russia and the United States have achieved before in this area.
So China has been excluded from the International Space Station. What does the West think of China's space aspirations?
Well, I think many countries would be wishing China well in this scientific and engineering endeavour, because it isn't really significant in any sort of military sense. It's not a threat in any way. And some countries have registered an interest in cooperating or flying out their experiments on the Chinese space station as an additional outlet to what they already do on the International Space Station. So there's been some informal noises from the European Space Agency and France about potentially seeking some scientific experimentation opportunities on the Chinese space station.
Now, there's a lot of focus on China right now on the international stage. This week we heard, for example, from NATO for the first time mentioning China posing a systemic challenge. How would you say that the exploration of space plays into this geopolitical posturing going on?
So I think we have to separate the crude exploration of space, so people or taikonauts or astronauts in space, and robots on the moon or on Mars. We have to put that aside, because that is science, engineering projects, very civilian, pretty harmless. But that is very different to building military and intelligence satellites in orbit that are providing military and security benefits on Earth. And in that way, China is modernizing its military and economic power in the same way that the United States and the West has done for the past 40 years or so. So on the military side, China is catching up to the West, but that is a very different kind of space activity and range of technologies to what is going on their space station. So that is very much a harmless space activity compared to the actual military space program that China also possesses.
Now, on this space mission that we're talking about that just docked at the Chinese space station, there are already other countries involved. We have one experiment from Norway, one experiment from India taking place up there. How isolated would you say that China is when it comes to its space exploration?
That's a good question. So China has been excluded from the International Space Station despite it wanting to be a part of it back in the 1990s. And they said then that they would pursue their own space station in the fullness of time. And now, they are achieving that. I think today China is nowhere near as isolated as it was back in the 1960s and arguably in the 1990s. So, China is becoming, second only to the United States in many aspects of space power. So I would not say China is particularly isolated these days. And with its longer-term lunar exploration program, it is seeking international activities and participation within its own projects. They're sort of in something of a similar attitude to what the Americans are doing with the Artemis project for lunar exploration. So there's still a problem in getting getting China and America to talk to each other in space for many, many reasons. But that isolation, it doesn't really apply to many other states, and especially Russia and Europe talk and engage with China much more regularly on space exploration and scientific activities compared to the United States and China.
Dr. Bleddyn Bowen from the University of Leicester, thank you so much for your insights here on Euronews Now.